By federal law, a species was only considered sapient when they achieved interstellar flight. Some would argue sapience as defined is not so much an indicator of how intelligent a species is, but rather a position of political privilege gained through fortunate circumstances. The contestation being, those identified as sapient weren't necessarily smarter than those who were mere clients of the Federation, but were just those who happened to experience optimal conditions for scientific advancements, or just those who happened to be much older than the rest when the Federation was formed. Indeed, even the great Trellum brain could not have achieved even suborbital flight if they had hailed from an M5 high-gravity world, and had been constantly plagued by environmental and social calamities for the past millennium. The Sapient Council's answer to this was that the client species could make better use of their time mining ore and producing goods than engaging in speculative dialect. Perhaps a few more centuries of hard work, and they too could unlock the secret of the warp drive. In any case, life as a client species was not bad. For a nominal tax, their sapient allies protected them from deep space hazards, and allowed them access to federal trade networks. Beyond that, their systems were left to their own devices. So said the Council. In reality, Sapient Council intelligence continuously worked on preventing or sabotaging key breakthroughs in client species academia that would lead to interstellar spaceflight technology. In fact, most species were manipulated by the SCI for centuries, sometimes even millennia before overt first contact was made. There was a reason so many civilizations had flood myths, a regression to a dark age just after the emergence of a fairly advanced society, believed that Homer was flat and the center of the universe for a period of time, and experienced at least one world war sometime in their history. And it was definitely not that the client species fundamentally lacked moral fortitude, as the Council repeatedly insinuated. And of course, almost all further arguments about the status quo were silenced by a firm reminder that the Sapiens had the bigger guns, the bigger ships, and the bigger WMDs. Almost. There's always one. In the outer fringes of Federation space, in a system orbiting a yellow star, lived a civilization of bipedal primates. These primates were an odd lot. For one, their homeworld ecosystem was a class 5 on the danger scale. Usually, the creatures that inhabited such worlds were too busy trying to kill each other to form societies, let alone spacefaring ones, but by the time first contact was made, they had already started terraforming a second planet in their system. For another, adversity seemed to be a catalyst rather than a hindrance to their advancement. They were a people easy to turn against each other, the SCI found, and murdered each other innumerable times over the course of their history, sometimes over reasons as trivial as belief systems and perceived interspecies variations. But each time they fought, or faced a calamity, natural or otherwise, they learned and adapted. In fact, one of the biggest jumps in technological advancement that they experienced happened in the wake of 2 consecutive world wars. But most of all, they were known for being the most obstinate species in the Federation. From the moment of their joining the Federation as a new client species, they had their own ideas of how the system should work, and were the loudest voice asking for the recognition of client sapience. For decades, they organized petitions, plebiscites, and protests, until finally, after only 53 years as a member species, they chose to leave the Federation. Soon after their departure, a Vol Hive fleet conveniently tore through their system, consuming all of their worlds. In the decades that followed, the extinction of the humans, as the primates called themselves, became a cautionary tale warning against those who would rock the boat too much. Conspiracy theories circulating amongst fringe elements that claimed the Council had a hand in the humans' extinction actually helped scare dissidents back into line. As the years marched, the humans faded from public memory. War ignited between the Federation and the Vol Hives. Federation citizens suffered death, displacement, and scarcity. Aid poured in from the galactic community at large, and the Vol were condemned in unison. By the end of the war, the Vol was defeated, at the cost of severe losses on the part of the Federation, the client species bearing the brunt. The Council military-industrial complex, meanwhile, grew exponentially, with most defense contractors turning record profits by the end. Coincidentally, several species that were expected to achieve sapience by the next century experienced complete economic collapse, if not societal collapse. 300 years after human extinction, the Quetzal, one of the older client races and strong supporters of the status quo, announced achievement of interstellar flight. They were formally accepted into the fold of the Sapient Council. They received lucrative trade deals with the other sapiens. Shortly after, the Council co-opted the humans' old Sapiens for All slogan in propaganda campaigns intended to raise client civilization productivity. By the end of the decade, Federation economy was back on track. Half a millennium after human extinction, a gigantic ship of unidentified make arrived in the Salem system, situated on the edge of Federation space, nearby where the humans' home system once was. It broadcasted a single hail. The humans request re-entry into the Federation. Representatives of the Sapient Council and the federal government at large arrived shortly after in the system. The Federation learned that while the human worlds really were destroyed by the Vol, a sizable fraction of humankind escaped the destruction in the gigantic vessel that was as much off-world habitat as it was spaceship. But what was most astonishing about this vessel was that it could not reach superluminal speeds. It was intended to, and covered interstellar distances over a centuries-long journey through the void of space. The humans called it a generation ship, a concept that seemed completely insane to the Feds. Generations of people spending their entire lives in deep space, never stepping foot on stable ground. The ship itself was a titanic marvel of engineering, with a hull spanning more than 100 kilometers in length, and containing decks upon decks of living quarters, food production modules, fabrication units, power plants, and everything in between. Propulsion was achieved through massive subluminal fusion reactors. It was practically the same sort of ship the humans would have used for intra-system travel, only exponentially enlarged. Conceptually not the most imaginative, but undeniably impressive in execution. The Feds were skeptical, but the truth was right there in front of their eyes. Humans, alive, light years away from their homeworld. Even so, the Council contended that the intent of the laws defining sapiens was FTL travel-capable species. The humans contested, citing the letter of the law, which mentioned only interstellar flight as the qualifier for sapiens. Federal court got involved, and with the entire galaxy watching, ruled in favor of the humans. Ironically, the law stated interstellar flight, not superluminal flight, only because the Council wanted to raise the bar for sapient recognition beyond species capable of short-range superluminal flight. But all the same, while the humans were formally recognized as sapiens, the other sapiens weren't obliged to give them the secret to FTL travel. The humans did not return to their home system. They couldn't, even if they wanted to, nor without journeying for another half-millennium. So they roamed the far reaches around Salem, dominion over which they traded for their home system. They became reclusive, rarely interacting with the other Federation species, if at all. The truth was, they had theoretically solved warp travel. 500 years was a long time to spend beyond the Council's influence, but it was precisely because of this that they were reclusive. Being free for so long gave time for introspection, and wised them up to the Council's devices. In the shadowy reaches of asteroid fields and barren moons, they mined, constructed and tested. The Council tried to send spies to meddle with the humans' work, but there was only so much they could do against an entire society of recluses vacuum-sealed in impenetrable habitats, and fellow sapiens at that. In just over a century, the humans created their first working warp drive. A few decades later, they had an entire fleet of their habitat ships, all FTL capable. The first thing they did next was to simultaneously visit as many client worlds as they could, and provide the key to superluminal flight. The Council followed close on their heels, but could never catch them, not by a long shot. The human ships plunged into deep space, their FTL drives taking them months at a time into the vast seas between the stars. Human society had adapted to the void, and become true children of the stars. The death of the Council was at hand. The dawn of a new Federation was on the horizon.